Welcome back, everyone. That's right. It's time to take another look at some of the most incredible near-death experiences that people have had and lived to tell the tale. But today, we're going to mix it up a little bit, so buckle up for an all-new episode of That's Who Will Meet Us in the Next World. I'm your host, and first up on our list is going to be Hospice Nurse Told the Shocking Truth. From Reddit, a user wrote, "My mom worked as a hospice nurse. She told me this story of something she experienced with a patient of hers that still haunts her to this day. Mom was caring for this elderly lady who was clearly ready to pass away. The lady's entire family showed up, must have been 20 or more people, all standing around the bed crying, praying, talking about how much they loved their grandma and how they'd miss her. There were so many people in the room that my mom had to stand by the door and watch from afar. The woman's eyes slowly fluttered open, and she looked at everyone surrounding her. After a few moments, she looked back at my mother and said, 'That's who will meet us in the next world.' My mom asked what she meant, and the woman responded, 'All of them, all of your family, they'll be waiting for you in the next world when you die. That's where you're going to go because you believe in God.' My mum said that she didn't know what else to say, but she was pretty sure that she wasn't going to heaven after hearing that. And then the woman passed away surrounded by her entire family. From Reddit, another user added, 'I was a home care nurse for a while and had a hospice patient who was very religious. She had her entire family around her when she died. I stayed in the room after everyone left because we had unplugged her machines and she was on comfort measures only. She opened her eyes and she whispered, 'You know, they're all here for me.' I asked who was there. She replied, 'Everyone. My family, friends, my pastors, even my pets. They're all here for me.' And then she stopped speaking. I kept checking her vitals, which were all stable. I went out into the hall to check on my supplies, and when I came back, she was gone. She must have died peacefully sometime within the few minutes that I stepped out of the room. Shortly after, the family arrived and they said that her passing was exactly like the way that she described it to me. They were all so grateful that I was in the room with her when she passed. And I told them it was really her family and friends who made it possible, because if they were truly there for her, then I just delivered her to them. She passed surrounded by all the love that she knew she had in her life. That was a beautiful thing to witness." From Reddit, a user wrote, "I used to work in a nursing home as a caregiver. We had this one sweet old lady who'd call me Big Mama. At the end of her life, she started getting extremely confused and would grab onto my arm and say, 'Help me. I need to get home.' Though she would always ask me where her husband was and if he would come to visit her. He passed away almost 20 years before she ended up in the home. Her son would come to visit her every week, but sadly, she never knew who he was. One day she passed away peacefully while holding onto my hand. I was sitting by her bed after my shift, and no one had come to collect her body yet. As I was sitting there, I could have sworn that I heard her whispering to me, 'Thank you. Now I can finally go home and find him.' I don't know if I imagined it or what, but it gave me goosebumps and chills." From Reddit, another user added, "This happened to my mum. She was working in a hospital, I think as an orderly. This patient was an elderly lady who had been in the hospital for a while. At the end of the shift, my mom was moving the lady from her bed to her wheelchair so they could take her somewhere, and the lady said, 'Oh, I thought you were coming to take me home.' Then my mom realized that she was right. It was time to take her home, and she was right. The lady passed away on her way home in the car." From Reddit, a user wrote, "My grandmother passed away at home a few years ago. She had cancer and was given a few weeks to live. She was bedridden and receiving hospice care. The whole family gathered at the house for what would be her last few days. Her brother flew in from out of state and brought his guitar. He sang old folk songs and Irish songs that she loved as we watched her slowly drift off. On the morning that she passed, we had the priest come and give her last rites. He asked if anyone wanted to speak, and I read her favorite poem. After that, he prayed and gave her a blessing. As he was leaving, he turned to us and said, 'Your sister called. She wanted to say goodbye, and she asked me to tell you that she loves you.' A minute later, the phone rang, and it was her sister calling from California. She had passed away 30 minutes before her sister, surrounded by the rest of the family. We were all stunned. My aunt had not been sick and had no indication that anything was wrong. I guess they died in each other's arms. Weirdest thing is that both sisters asked to have their ashes divided equally between the remaining family members. I now have a vial of my two aunts' ashes on my mantelpiece. It's comforting to know that they're still with us in a way. From Reddit, another user added, "This reminds me of a friend of mine whose father passed away suddenly when he was in college. He was given the option of shipping the body back home for burial or cremating his dad. Not knowing what to do, he chose cremation. Several months later, he was visiting his mom and he found her looking through her late husband's things. She pulled out a small box filled with soil from his garden. He asked her why she saved this, and she said that he always told her that when he passed, he wanted to be buried in his garden under their favorite oak tree. They had moved several times, but he always kept that box of dirt with him and made plans for where he wanted to be laid to rest. It's amazing how something as simple as dirt can hold so much meaning and memory." From Reddit, a user wrote, "Years ago, I had a patient who was dying of lung cancer. He was a heavy smoker his entire life, had never tried to quit. He was well aware that his smoking was the reason he was dying. He was mid-70s, had recently retired and had recently lost his wife of 50 years. We started discussing palliative care options. He refused all of them. He wanted to keep fighting. His family consisted of a son who was an atheist, a daughter who was a Mormon, and another daughter who was Catholic. He was angry about having estranged himself from his daughters over the years. Near the end of his life, he became a changed man, willing to talk about anything and everything. He talked about his regrets, how he wished he could have done things differently, being proud of his daughters, and how he wished he could tell them. He also expressed his love for his wife and how much he missed her. I had several conversations with him about this. About 3 days before he passed, he told me that he wasn't afraid of dying. He said that he had been given a wonderful life and had no complaints. He said that he had a good run and was ready to move on to the next adventure. I wish I could convey how peaceful he was. He passed away 1 day later with his son by his bedside. It was beautiful. The second day, his daughters called to let him know that they loved him and forgive him. He wasn't able to respond, but I relayed their message to him. I feel that he found peace during those final hours. I learned so much from him about life, death, regret, acceptance, and peace. And that's all the time we have for today's episode. Thank you guys for joining me. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to subscribe down below. I've been your host, and we'll see you next time for more crazy stories. Bye.